Welcome back, CheapFunCrafting friends, and thank you for stopping by. Today we are weaving a miniature traditional African basket from the Gikuyu tribe of Kenya. The traditional name for this kind of basket is kiondo. It's a handmade Kenyan basket deeply rooted in Kikuyu culture. Traditionally, it was used for carrying produce, and it still is, and storing household goods. In modern times, it's used more as a stylish handbag. The craft of weaving a kiondo is both practical and deeply cultural. It's a way of passing on knowledge, history, and identity from one generation to the next. Now, my grandmother was an avid basket weaver, and I started observing her from about 30 years ago, making baskets from scratch. She would harvest sisal plants. She would scrape off the fleshy parts to expose the fibers, and then she would spin those fibers on her lap. And I'm going to show you a little clip of that here using, of course, acrylic yarn. She would also dye the fibers using natural sources like leaves and roots and create a wide range of earthy colors, all from nature. Now, because this is cheap fun crafting and sisal isn't exactly easily available where I live, I decided to improvise. So I'll be using an old t-shirt and some leftover yarn, and these are perfect for creating spokes and weavers for this basket. All right, so grab your yarn and let's get started. So I've had to learn some basket making terminology. The vertical strands, warps, are called spokes, and the horizontal strands, wefts, are called weavers. The weaving basket itself is called coiling. It's a pretty simple process. It entails twisting the weavers to form an X and passing a spoke in between. So you twist the weavers to form an X and pass the spokes in between. I tend to hold the weavers with my index finger in between the two weavers, pull them really taut, and pass the spoke in between. That ensures a nice, secure weave. I'll show you that again. That is the weaving process. When it comes to making the spokes, I used an old t-shirt to make t-shirt yarn by cutting about 3 1/4 of an inch wide. No need to measure, you can just guesstimate. But before you begin cutting the spokes, think about how wide or big you want your basket to be. This takes into consideration the radius of the base and the height of your basket, because this will determine the length of your spokes. A good rule of thumb is half the total spoke length should match the radius plus the height of the finished basket. That is half the total of the spoke length, because you tend to fold the spokes into half when you're weaving. So I cut them and then I stretch them out to make the t-shirt yarn. So to start the weaving, you want to initiate with about 6 strands of the t-shirt yarn. So the fewer strands you use, the less bulky the starting stitch or starting weave will be. So you fold your spokes into half, you get your weaver, and you intertwine the weaver just like I'm doing here with the spokes. and you start the coiling process. So you twist the weavers to make an X, and you grab your fast spoke from the one half side of the weaver bundle, spoke bundle. It can be a little bit tricky, but you try it a couple of times and you get the hang of it. Even it was tricky even for me. So twist, grab the fast spoke from one side, and you're going to weave the one side until you come to the half point and continue on to the other side to complete the full circle. So this section here, the starting the foundation, is pretty much the hardest part of basket weaving. Well, I probably lied. There is one more hard part. But once you get those two sections done, which is the foundation and adding the spokes as the basket gets bigger, then you're home dry. So I have crossed the halfway point, and now I'm going to the other half of the circle. And today I have to apologize for doing a voiceover. I lost my some of my recordings. My files were corrupted, so I've had to do a VO. So please bear with me. So when the circle is completed, so you want to weave at least 3 or 4 rows at the foundation here, keeping the weavers really taut to make sure that that foundation is nice and strong. So after you've done 3 or 4 rows at the base, you want to start adding spokes so that your base or your circle becomes bigger. So by the time this base has gotten to this point, I've actually added quite a number of spokes. The other thing that happens is if you don't add spokes, your basket is going to start, your base is going to start folding upwards to take the basket shape before you're ready to get that shape. So you're going to determine how large you want your base to be, and you're going to keep adding spokes, making sure that the basket is not bending upwards until you're ready to make the walls of the basket. So to add the spokes is pretty much one of the harder parts of making a basket, and I'm going to demonstrate that here. It entails getting a spoke, finding the midpoint of that spoke. You get a new spoke, you find the midpoint, you twist or coil your weave, you lay your new spoke in between that X at the midpoint, and this is where you need the 10 fingers that you don't have. Well, the 20 fingers that you don't have. You have 10. So lay the new spoke right in between there and do another twist. Pick 2 or 3 of existing spokes. So that's a new spoke on the left there. I've already picked one existing spoke. I'm going to twist and weave another existing spoke. And then I'm going to take that new spoke from the inside side of the basket, the side that's not the nice side. You're going to take that half of the spoke and bring it back to the rim of your work right there and add it as a second half of the spoke. So pretty much by adding one spoke, you're adding 2 spokes because you're adding 2 halves to make 2 spokes. then of course you want to secure by continuing with the spokes that exist. And you will see it makes that little um, dash on the inside. So that will be the inside part of the basket, the not nice side. The spoke is secure, of course, but you have to do another one or two row to make sure it's firmly secure. If you do pull, however, one end of the spoke, the other end will come out at this point. But if you pull them together, it's nice and taut, and that's how you add a new spoke. Since this is a very tricky part, I'm going to demonstrate again with a new setup and with a different colored new spoke. Hopefully it's going to make it clear. However, if you'd like a live tutorial of this, just put it in the comments and I can help you with that. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. So let's get a new sample. So in this one, I'm going to use a white spoke. So again, you twist your weaver. You lay the new spoke at the midpoint, the halfway point of the new spoke. You lay it right on the X. You determine which side is the wrong side of the basket, the side where you hide all your naughty bits, all the things that nobody wants to see. So lay it in the middle there, twist, weave some two more foundation existing spokes, twist. You've determined which side is your bad side, and usually the bad side is the one facing away from you. The good side is usually the one that faces your body. So grab the spoke, the half from the bad side, and bring it back onto the rim. So twist and bring that spoke back into the rim. Again, essentially, you end up adding two spokes out of one because you get two halves. And I'm going to weave two more spokes here just to secure that. And that's what it looks like, and it is nice and secure. So you want to keep adding spokes until your base is wide enough. After you've gotten the diameter that you want on your base, then you stop adding the spokes, because then the basket is going to start forming that upward formation to make the walls of the basket. The other thing I've done here is I decided my weavers were giving me a hard time because I had to keep adding new yarn and I ended up having too many tails. So I made it balls, and that made it a lot easier because I didn't have to add any more tails. However, it does get tangled a lot. That's just the nature of making this kind of basket. As you're weaving your basket, try to think about the tension that you're applying on the weavers and keep this tension the same. If you make it too tight, you will notice that the walls of your basket will start caving in. So bear in mind that you want to keep that tension the same, not too tight, not too loose, just enough to make a nice secure basket. Once your basket has got to the length, your desired length, and a length that's proportionate to the base, you want to start beginning the end, closing up the rim. And the way we do that is by taking the spokes and folding the remaining part of the spoke into half. You do want a nice tip remaining on the inside, so you want to take the spoke, bend it or fold it just like I'm doing here, and then weave that spoke, and you will have a tail on the inside part of the basket. And this is probably the fast row of bending the spokes is a little bit tricky. You have to make sure you find each spoke and bend each particular spoke. Otherwise, you're going to have to undo everything and go back to a missed spoke. So bend it, hold it nice and secure, and weave it in. I'm going to hold this vertical so that you can see the rim. So do my twist on my coil. Find the spoke, fold it or bend it, have a nice long tail remaining, and twist. So you're going to do this for every spoke, and after this is done, you want to do at least 4 or 5 rows of the bent spokes, and that secures the rim of the basket. So I'm going to do a couple more here so that you can see how it's done. And this is what the first row after folding the spokes looks like. And that the tail end, you can pull on the spoke on the tail end, and you do have one stationary end. So you turn it I've turned it inside out here. You can see the first row there, and I'm going to proceed with weaving until I have 6 rows. So depending with the intended use of the basket, that will determine the rim rows. If the basket is for carrying heavy objects, then you might have up to 15-20 rows to make sure that the rim is well secured, because you'd also be putting handles on the basket, and the handles would be pulling on the weave. So I proceeded to do 6 rows in total. Don't worry too much if the weavers don't look perfect at this point, because once you're done with your rim rows, you can always pull on the stationary side of the spoke and push those weavers down to make sure they look nice and pretty and they're sitting nice and flat. So here I'm done with my rim rows, and I wasn't sure what to do with the weavers, how to secure them to make sure that it did not unravel, so I ended up tying a knot. I am not sure this is the authentic way of finishing off the last twist of the weaver, but this is what I did. If anybody knows of the authentic way of doing this, please leave it in the comments, let me know. So I secured that with the knot. I'm going to show you the inside here, and you can see that I did quite a number of rows. I think this is a bit excessive. I did 6 rows. It might be a bit excessive for decorative basket, but hey, I was having fun. I did 6 rows. So there's a lot of guesswork involved here. In terms of the finishing, I consulted my sister and she says this is the authentic way of doing it, but I can't be sure. I measured the circumference of the basket with the weavers so that I would get a good length, and I also made sure they crisscrossed. The next step is to pass the weavers through the spokes, so through the loop of the spokes there. I tried doing all 4 in one go, but it was going to be too thick. So I ended up separating the weavers into 2 and had 2, one section of the weavers going in clockwise direction and the other one going in anti-clockwise, and then they overlapped a little bit at the end. When I first started, I was passing the weavers through the spokes with my fingers, but that would have taken forever. I finally had a eureka moment and figured out if I used my crochet needle that this would go a lot faster. However, in this process, make sure you don't miss out on any spoke, because if you do and you try and pull on that spoke, it's going to compromise the integrity of a basket, especially if it's a practical basket for carrying heavy items. So at the end here, I made sure that the 2 weavers overlapped. And this would make a lot of sense for practical basket. You want to make sure everything is nice and secure because you're going to be carrying heavy items. So after securing the weavers, you turn the basket inside out and you start pulling on the tail end of the spokes. So initially I did not pull the spokes tight because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any spokes. I did not, and I realized I actually missed 2 spokes, did not have weavers running through, and I had to pull the weaver out and redo it again. So you might want to do that. Initially just pull them loose and check on every spoke, make sure it's been captured in the weaver. And after I made sure everything was captured, I came back around and pulled really tight on those tails to secure the rim. I'm also pulling on the weaver here and stretching the basket out a little bit to make sure that that rim is in alignment with the rest of the basket. It's not caving inwards. So when it comes to the tails, I believe in an authentic sisal basket, you would just tie a knot at the end of this tail where it meets the rim, and you would clip it. Again, I'm not sure whether that's the authentic way of doing it, but I believe it is. However, because this is a decorative basket and I wanted it to look pretty, I tied the knot. I didn't like how the tails would look, and of course all these other tails that are hanging out, you would get a crochet basket, a crochet needle, and secure them. So for this, what I did is I tied a knot to make sure the t-shirt here doesn't slip out, but then I also used a crochet needle to secure the tails so that they had a nice tidy finish. I believe this is not necessary if you're using sisal, but if you're using artificial materials like these that have a lot of slippage and they are not coarse fibers, this probably helps to keep everything secure. So I tie the knot and I pull through with a crochet, and that secures the spokes and gives it a nice tidy finish. So I really had a good time, really enjoyed how this miniature basket turned out, and honestly I am so tempted to make a full size version of this now. So if you'd like to see a video of a large regular size basket, leave a comment and let me know. If you're also interested in a live tutorial, drop that in the comments. I'm thinking about setting up a fan club and offering free fun live crafting sessions so we can make some of these exciting things together. So let's get this video to 5,000 likes and 1,000 comments, and I will do a full-size basket. So I'm securing the weavers here, and that should come to bring the little basket to a conclusion. Of course, if you wanted handles, you can always do leather handles, or you can do sisal handles. And if you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Your support helps keep this creative journey going. It keeps me excited about making stuff and sharing what I know. So until next time, see you at CheapFunCrafting.